So I'm always going to look at it because there's new ways of thinking, there's new technologies, there's new information that comes, and we want to be able to adjust and iterate on that.
My name is Matt Reiner, managing partner at Capital Investment Advisor, CEO of Wealth Strategies, an author, podcast host, and also a speaker to the wealth management community. My mission is to help every family in this country have access and be served by a human financial advisor. That we all have to live in the moment and not try to force progress too quickly. Let it happen and commit to a long-term strategy in your life, in your business, and in your investment portfolio.
And now, your host and my dad, Matt Reiner.
Aaron Klein, welcome to the FutureProof Advisor podcast. So happy to have you, man. How are you?
Great to be with you, Matt. I'm awesome, and it's looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is great. I was so honored to have you come on, that you spent time with us, and we've been following your path and your journey as everybody in the industry has for so long. So this will be a fun conversation, and I think it's going to be great. We're going to talk about some of the ways that you identify trends. Talking about, I think it's super interesting when you started Riskalyze, what was going on in the world at that time. And now there's some other things happening in the world. And we'll talk about some of the things that you're seeing. And then we'll talk about the industry and technology as a whole. And maybe we'll have some, things to share along the way in the podcast. But before we get into it, you've had an amazing journey in a career. I always like to ask, just on the personal level, what did the 13-year-old Aaron Klein want to be when he grew up?
Well, the funny thing about that question is I was already working. I started working in the afternoons after school for my dad at the age of 12. And so I think 8-year-old Aaron Klein wanted to be wanted to run his own detective agency or something like that. But 13-year-old Aaron Klein had kind of started into early stage of career. And for my dad, he was in wholesale distribution of automatic gates and security equipment. It was a brutal business, like 18% gross margins, commoditized product. Everybody had what you're selling. And so you could really only compete on service and taking care of your customers. And so, I would say that I always joke it taught me three things. The first was just the grit that it takes to be an entrepreneur. The second was that, look, if you take good care of the clients that you serve, they will take good care of you. And the third was that I really wanted to be in a higher margin business when I grew up. So anyway, worked for my dad for a number of years, and that was amazing. I learned so much from him. He taught me everything I know about entrepreneurial business.
I think that's incredible. And those are lessons that I think entrepreneurs struggle to learn until later on. And you're able to learn at such an early age. And I'm curious, though, from, it does shape what you led to. But talk to us about that time from working, for your dad at 12, 13 to then, through your career, and how that, just tell us about that journey that got you to building Riskalyze and Nitrogen.
Yeah, it is really interesting because it was really a process of just, learning and stumbling upon different things. So, that whole learning of want to be in a higher margin business, probably in the mid 90s to late 90s, I started playing around with this thing called the internet, which was coming of age, and so I was trying to get his business online per se, I still remember I wired up the first network in his office with Windows for work groups or whatever it was called back then. And, he was just like, this email thing, why we have these pink while you were out message pads, why would we send emails to each other? We're right here, it's it made no sense. But, we quickly, my dad started to see the power of email. Then all of a sudden we started getting orders from customers who would email us, an order or something like that. And so I think he started to get the vision for it. And that's when he coughed up the money to pay for our own dedicated phone line for the modem to dial the internet, because it kept making the fax machine busy and he just could not stand that. So So, so anyway, we're playing with all this stuff around the internet and trying to take this wholesale distribution company and kind of like help it be online a bit. And I just started getting really intrigued about this idea that like you could build software that ran on the internet, through a web browser. And, we had like an office in another state with a second warehouse with some inventory in that other state. And it was always a nightmare to know like what they had versus what we had. And I'm just like, this is something you could solve really easily if you could like have software running on the internet. So, we were messing around with that. We kind of like incubated something inside of his company with like another partner and him as a partner and all those things. And so we're, very unfocused, like trying to figure this out, like not really understanding a whole lot about the state of the art of that, but like learning and, ended up building some different things. His company ended up selling, and about that time, I actually kind of pulled together some people, and we were doing this, like we were building this. This at the moment we didn't have the word cloud, and we didn't have the word SaaS or software as a service, so we just called it web-based software, which was really a bad name. But we created this system for companies like my dad's. Actually, the company that bought his company still runs on it, which is crazy. And that system, was kind of managing orders and inventory across multiple locations. And so we kind of built this. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it beyond that one customer really. Like we really couldn't scale it. I made a ton of mistakes in that first startup, and what was not scaling it, did not have good product market fit, did not added way too many people before we kind of figured out repeatable revenue and how to grow an actual business. And so that company failed, and it really, we were able to kind of hand the software to the one customer and like allow them to kind of keep going, but the company failed. And so that was super painful and difficult. And so now we're just about to enter the global financial crisis. I don't know that that's coming. I end up getting recruited for a job. It was a division of an options brokerage firm, and I was helping them. I kind of led product development for them and helped them build technology products for options traders. And lo and behold, it turned out to be a great time to go into a job because the global financial crisis hit and everybody was kind of in lockdown for a few years. And so, I'm there building these, helping to build these products and, really learning what it took to actually be a product person, really learning a lot more about the financial services business. And it turned out that those two skill sets really, really came together because I don't know, it was somewhere there in the 09-10 timeframe that I'm really having a conversation with a buddy of mine who's a financial advisor. And I'm like, man, it is crazy how the average individual thinks about the concept of risk. And he says, if you think that's crazy, you should see how us financial advisors think about it. Like, we just haven't had the tools in our profession to really understand who our clients are and align them with the risk in their portfolios. We asked them, he goes, I from my broker dealer, I have this, stupid questionnaire and they check some boxes on it. And I go, you sound like a moderate investor to me. And they say, yes, I feel very moderate today. That sounds right. And then he goes, great, I can put you in like the Vanguard moderate portfolio. We have no idea if all the people at this table mean the same thing by the word moderate. And so he and I were really talking about that. We're like, I think we can like put the feet and inches into this process for financial advisors. Like contractors and architects don't communicate by saying moderately aggressive hallway to a moderately conservative living room or something like that. Like we use feet and inches in blueprints. Why couldn't we do that for financial advisors? And so that's how the risk number was really born. And that's, those skill sets came together, being able to like, be a product person and understand how to shape technology products well, and then also understand the financial services business and be able to kind of bring some of that experience to the table.
That was an interesting time of, spotting some trends, right? You had the Great Recession, and then you had the advent of robo advisors, which was like this concept that everybody was worried about. I'm wondering, I know that you had that conversation with your friend that started the risk score, but were you seeing, or did you see anything happening in our business at that point in time that was unique relative to maybe prior to those trends happening that said, this is an opportunity to help solve a major problem for both the clients and for the advisors at that point that was different than maybe 4 years before that.
What I can't say that I saw with perfect foresight was that there really was this big hole in the industry that nobody had kind of seen. Like if you think about it, every wealth management firm would kind of buy three pillars of technology. You'd buy your CRM, you'd buy your portfolio accounting tool, you'd buy your financial planning tool. And it was kind of gospel, like those were the three things you needed to buy. And there hadn't been this massive explosion of all the tools. Like right now, it takes like a magnifying glass to read the Kitsis FinTech, heat map, right? And so there hadn't been that explosion. And I remember being told by several people who are very smart, and who I admire, like there's not room for a fourth pillar, because like that was kind of my message. Like we're missing something. Like the CRM super important so that you know who your customers are. The portfolio accounting tool is super important so you can tell people what has happened. The financial planning is super important so you can tell people what's gonna happen 30 years in the future. But there are a lot of people who will blow up a perfectly good financial plan because they're not aligned with how they want to be invested right now. And it makes them fearful and they sell at the worst possible time and it blows up a perfectly good financial plan in the future. And so we're missing this piece, in the middle called risk and risk alignment. And that needs to happen. That should be the fourth pillar in a financial advisor stack. That was a very contrarian viewpoint. I didn't see it that way at the time, but as it turns out, there was really an opening for that. And I don't think I necessarily saw that with perfect clarity, but when we got into it, it became clear to me that it was all but inevitable that was going to come true. And, I think, as they say, the rest is history once we kind of found our path.
I think that now we're in another period of time where there is something happening in our world that is reshaping how we do work and live life with artificial intelligence. And you think about, and then you think about in our industry with the emergence of private equity and M&A and how that's reshaping our business. I'm curious on your side, as you sit here, you're not at a job that is boring anymore, unless retirement. I can see an entrepreneur in retirement is a little bit boring. So maybe you are, but the people you're around, your family, is not causing you strain or discomfort. But what do you see with AI? What trend is happening and what problem out there do you see needs to be solved now that we're entering this new world of AI within wealth management?
First of all, I think it's a huge platform shift. I'm not in any way trying to minimize it. I think it's massive. Okay. But I very much believe that it will continue to empower human beings to just do more faster, to have superhuman capabilities in what they do. It's going to move humans kind of up the food chain in terms of the work that they do. To put it simply, this new company that that I've started, when I hired our lead architect, the minute I knew that he was the right guy for the job was like early on in the interview. And I said, tell me how you think AI is going to change software engineering. And he said, we're sitting here in Idaho, where I live, Boise, Idaho. And he says, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, a farmer right here in Boise, Idaho could, maybe manage 2 or 3 acres on his own. Okay. And then with the advent of like the tractor and automation and the right kinds of technology, okay, all of a sudden that single farmer could easily manage 20 to 30 acres on his own. It was a 10x improvement in what the human being was able to do with some automation and technology. I'm not going to try to put a number on it, but that's the equivalent of what AI is doing for a lot of different fields. What AI is not going to do is it's not going to abolish software. It's not going to change the fact that we all don't really want to live in a chatbot and like hold our entire lives together with baling wire and chewing gum and try to remind ChatGPT what we were thinking about 10 years ago. I take nothing away from ChatGPT. I use it 35 times a day. Like, it's a great tool, okay? But it's not going to replace the need for purpose-built software that does things with precision for us and our businesses on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's that linearity, that things move in linear fashion that gets people in trouble. It's the same thing that we were thinking just a few years ago in the pandemic, that nobody's ever going to go back to a gym. And gyms are filled again, right? It just, people get over it and it doesn't move in a linear fashion. There's so much that happens. So with AI, what is the problem that you all are looking to solve?
This new company, I'm very excited about it. It's called Contio. And Kantio, by the way, is the Latin term they used back in the Roman Empire to describe meetings where big momentous decisions were discussed. And so, the root of all of this is, I'm running Riskalyze. I'm thinking back to maybe 2017, 2018. We probably have 200 people. I'm spending 70% of my time in meetings. In fact, I went back and looked at it. I averaged like 4.8 a day. It added up to like over 38,000 meetings over the course of 12 and a half years running that company, which is kind of crazy. But, I just remember, I've had this product in my head that I call the Meeting OS for years, because I just remember, like, your agenda might be over here in Google Docs and your notes are over here in Notion and your documents are somewhere on Dropbox and that presentation is over here and the email thread you want to talk about is buried in Gmail somewhere. And like, there's got to be a better way. And then, what's interesting is that AI has come along and made that a way better idea. But when I look at the current dichotomy on this, AI note takers are actually making the problem of meetings worse. So, yeah, I mean, you and I both seen it, like 7 robots join the call. Okay. They do nothing to actually make the meeting better. They just record the misery and send us emails about it. And so I just look at this and I go, I really believe that there's a better way. We are building AI that is going to turn every person into an elite meeting strategist who runs snappier meetings, smarter meetings, and action-packed meetings. So we're actually going to change the content of the meeting and we're going to kill broken meetings. And so, I think I'm super excited about it. We just unveiled the company just a few days ago, actually, and I'm really excited to see. We're going to launch a product later this fall. We've got the wait list open at Kantio.ai, and we're super excited to get out there and really kill broken meetings for people. And the other thing I'll say about it is we're building this as a platform. So what I mean by that is, it is to some extent a very horizontal idea that cuts across a lot of different industries and a lot of different verticals. But we've built this product as a platform. And so we're able to deliver specialized AI for individual verticals. And of course, the first one is going to be for financial advisors, because I feel like I have 20,000 of them as friends, and it would be really dumb not to do that. So we're excited to deliver Contio for financial advisors first later this fall.
But the applicability is industry agnostic, as I could imagine. I mean, as you were talking, like it just like filled my heart with joy to hear someone say they're going to solve for meetings, because meetings are the enemy, it seems like, of progress, but the necessity for progress as well. It's like this like paradigm, like this like counterintuitiveness that is necessary, but you need to have them, or you just get into abdication and just expect people to do it, and then you get frustrated from that. And to your point about softwares, right? We use a meeting software and there's 1,000 of them. So now you have yet another software you have to go to distill the notes, to then distill what you need to do with the action items. I'm curious, when you think about a platform, right? Or I love the idea of a meeting operating system, and y'all dealt with this with Riskalyze. So I'm interested in how you're thinking about this with Contio. Is this another software, or do you get success by having this live within a software that someone else is already using, right? Is there a challenge to get them to adopt something new and make that transition, especially I think about in wealth management?
A big part of this is it snaps right into the calendar that you're already using, and it works with any of the video call platforms, or it works for in-person meetings too. So if you're going to truly be a meeting OS, you're not going to go force everybody to rip and replace their calendar. You're not going to force everybody to move on to a different video call platform or something like that. So it's got to work in the ecosystem that you already live in, and that's how we're building the product. There's always the challenge of adoption, but I would argue that's the art of building a great product, is one that, number one, makes it incredibly easy to kind of on-ramp into the product, almost natural. and where you can be a very casual, easy user of it at the beginning, and then very quickly understand and see the power of it and go, this is worth a little bit of effort. You got to make sure it's a little bit of effort, not a lot of effort, but this is worth a little bit of effort to kind of adopt this and start using it. So one of the things that we've done is we've built this entire product to, you could have a single person in your organization who can get immense value out of it using it themselves in meetings, even if nobody else in your organization is using it. And then, we can just let it spread like wildfire inside of organizations.
I want to get in. You've said snappier twice, so I want to get into that. What makes a snappier meeting? But before we do, what makes meetings so broken?
Well, I mean, I'm going to flip it and say, let's think for a moment about the best meetings that you and I have ever been in, because the honest answer to your question is it's the absence of those things. Okay, so if I think about the best meetings that you and I have ever been in, there's a few common ingredients. Number one, we know exactly what we're there to talk about. We have specific questions we're trying to answer, and we're not getting together for a go around the table. Let's read through the entire encyclopedia of the organization's problems, which is what most status update staff meetings are, right? But no, we are there with a specific set of questions to answer. We know exactly what we're there to talk about. That's very clear. Number two, we have just the right people around the table. This is, it's not a United Nations meeting, it's a situation room meeting, right? And so if you have a mental mindset like that, you're like, yeah, these United Nations meetings where we have 30 people in the room are not only super inefficient, but they also like bog down the meeting discussion in and of itself. You've got the right data at your fingertips so that you actually can answer the questions and make decisions. I think they also have, engaged participants. If you solve those first three things, it's much easier to have engaged participants who are not multitasking, doing work on their laptops because they're trying to salvage something out of this time for their poor employer, right? And then they've got very clear outcomes and very clear next steps, and everybody feels like they understand, what did we decide, and who needs to know, and who needs to do what by when now, right? And so when you get those things right, like meetings, first of all, are they're faster, they're snappier, they're also smarter. I think AI can help us perform better in meetings because we have better memories and we have better, the data comes together to kind of help us perform better in meetings. And then, like I said, they're action packed. Like we every meeting, it should be a big yellow flag for us if we're walking out of a meeting and there's not some kind of next step that's coming out of that meeting. Otherwise, why did we meet? Okay. And I think when we get to that stage of snappier, smarter, and action packed, that's where we kill broken meetings off of people's calendars. And I think part of this is just, to some extent, it's AI helping you see that that's the wrong meeting to schedule. Okay. That like, hey, that's a read through the encyclopedia kind of meeting. And here's some other ways that maybe we can solve that problem and get you one or two meetings down the timeline to the one that you actually want to schedule.
A lot of people that I've been talking to in the industry, advisors, have adopted different operating systems like OKRs, Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, to help run their business. And those have structures around it. I'm curious how you think about what y'all are building with your operating system fitting into something of that nature. Or does it kind of maybe give them something new to use and adopt I know it can be one individual person, but if I'm thinking about from an organizational standpoint, have y'all identified any of that, or do you see that working in parallel with something of an operating system?
Great question. First of all, we'll have like EOS style templates in this product so that you can adopt and use those. Like all good AI products where, I long since, I think it was probably January of 2023 that I said to myself, I wrote down somewhere in a notebook, like, I really don't think the future of software is the old software with an AI chatbot bolted to the side of it for an extra $30 a month. Like, I just don't think that that's what the future is. Um, but so I'll just say like all good, built from the ground up AI infused software, one of the things that we should be doing is actually eliminating work for the user and kind of jumping the user ahead on the timeline in many respects. So some of the paradigm in that operating system that you're talking about, frankly, may need to change, or I don't even know that it'll be a conscious change. It'll be like, oh wow, that's already done. Like I'm 3 steps forward in the timeline of what that operating system used to kind of direct me to do. But I think, again, if we do this right, it should snap into the existing operating system that people are using for their business, and then they just find that it's all happening much faster.
Yeah, it's a more of a rethinking it as opposed to adding on to it, which is where I think you're going, which is super exciting. And as we think about shifting a little bit as technology, right? You're bringing a new technology into wealth management. You understand wealth management super well. Where do you see the sweet spot for gaining technological efficiencies while also elevating the human relationship? And the reason I ask this is because you're talking about the Kitsy's landscape map, and there's just more tools and more tools, and now with AI, everybody's just adopting more AI tools to try to be there. But there's got to be this like balance, and I'm trying to understand how others are thinking through that. Of where is that equilibrium point of you've got efficiencies, but you're still having that human relationship. You're using it in a way to empower the human, not to diminish the value of the human. Because I think that, to your point that you said earlier, the value of the human is just going to get greater, I think, the more that AI becomes part of the process.
I think maybe the best analogy to think about that is to like go back to the decade of the 1920s, 100 years ago. Over the course of that decade, this was documented in a book that I found super interesting, and like at the beginning of the decade, the amount of factory production that 100 people could accomplish, by the end of that decade, it only took 69 people to accomplish. Okay, that's a massive step forward. And the question is like, what happened to the 31 people? Okay. The truth is that like the free market did its magic, and there wasn't like, again, our brains want to go to a simple thing. Oh, everybody's going to get laid off because of AI or something like that, right? Or financial advisors aren't going to have a job because of AI or something like that. The truth is that like if you go and look at what actually happened there, it's not like we all of a sudden had 31 people who were out of work in 1925. In fact, that was actually a booming decade before we got into the Great Depression for other reasons. Okay, and there was like actually massive growth in employment throughout that decade, even as productivity was skyrocketing. In that time, and so. The truth is that the free market did its magic, right? And there was this combination of different things that were happening. So fast forward to today, how does that apply to financial advisors? I think that all of these technologies, I don't know how much time, I would look at a single financial advisor and go, how much time are you spending right now? And then slice that by the amount of time you're spending actually communicating and interacting and engaging with clients, and how much time you're spending behind the scenes then doing the things and implementing the things and preparing the things that you need to present to clients or promise clients that you would do. Okay. At the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're going to dramatically shrink the amount of time that is required on that non-client interaction side of the equation. Where is that time going to go? I would argue it's going to be a similar combination. We're going to have more time to spend with clients. We're going to maybe be able to take on more clients for the same amount of work. We're going to be able to probably work fewer hours, and we're going to have lower costs. And whether that means that we want to bring our fee down, or whether that means we just want to bring down our minimums, or there's a whole bunch of different ways, and the free market is going to do its magic. But at the end of the day, it's a better, more abundant world. Like clients get more time with the financial advisor who's helping them figure out a path to success. That's a great world.
Yeah, and I love that way of how you think about it and breaking out what you're doing behind the scenes and what you're doing client. I can see that on kind of a scale, and you can see how that scale shifts. And that is when you've got that equilibrium, when you are shifting down the amount of behind the scenes and up the amount of client-facing relationship, human aspect. And if you think about it in that way, then every decision you make goes through that lens. which allows you to focus on what's important, which is the human relationship.
That's what we say about, meetings at Contio is like, well, if we know the elements of a brilliant meeting, well, why don't we just apply those elements to all of the meetings on our calendar right now? And the answer is because it's a lot of work. Because it takes something on the order of 3 times the amount of time you've scheduled for the meeting to do all of the work, to know exactly what we're going to talk about, to put the right people around the table, like all those preparation things that are the elements of a brilliant meeting. And nobody has time for it because we're all scheduled back to back to back to back to back, running from thing to thing. So if AI can do 95% of that work for us, that's really the ingredient that allows us to actually kill broken meetings.
More productive, like you're talking about, the production capacity is elevated, as you talked about in the 1920s. It's a similar game. And I think you saw, I mean, everybody talks about banks and ATMs and everything of that nature. I've seen more banks going on every corner than anything, because it's like, they're like, oh, they're going away, but they're not. They're just reshaping what they do inside of banks. They aren't tellers anymore. They are now consultants now. And you go there to consult with them on your financial needs. And I think when you think about extra time, what I think about and what we think about a ton in our firm is growth strategies. You sit in the seat that serves financial advisors. You have helped to have advisors adopt something new. The Riskalyze growth story is an incredible one. How you grew it, I've just heard through the grapevines and watching and learning and reviewing how you've done it in the past. You're a master at it, but you know advisors so well. I'm curious, as we start saying now you're looking to use a new business to create more time to help serve more families, that growth is a part of that. Now you have time to do it. From your perspective, in your seat, how can advisors better look at growing their firms that they may be missing from the mindset of someone that has served them for so long? That is a different perspective from there.
I would say that businesses are kind of like a complicated mathematical equation that sums up to 100. Okay. And so what you're trying to figure out how to do is you're trying to figure out how to adjust the equation to find an advantage and be able to free up resources to shift to the valuable parts of the equation that improve your value proposition for your client. Okay. And so, here's what I mean by that. Financial advisors, I would argue, they could use to be more focused on how they can invest in their businesses. Okay. I really do believe that financial advisors underinvest in their businesses in a number of ways. I would start with technology. Okay. I'm not just saying, oh, go out and buy 50 technology tools for the sake of buying technology tools, but be really thoughtful. Look at that growth stack. I continually was surprised at the number of financial advisors who would be, I would argue, penny wise and pound foolish. It was a small minority, but like they would cancel Riskalyze because they're like, well, I kind of feel like I know where my clients are now. And you're kind of like, yeah, well, that's a moving target, and you have new clients coming aboard, old clients leaving. You really need to continually remind your clients that you're delivering a solution that's in alignment with who they are. And if you can't, very easily illustrate and tell that story, there's going to be issues with that. And lo and behold, many of them would come running back, 6 months later and go, my clients are really unhappy that I'm not showing them that, that risk number thing anymore. But I just sit there and I go, what mindset leads you to say, oh, I want to save a few $1,000s, for something that is actually producing, usually $400,000 to $800,000 of new revenue into the firm, or sorry, I should say more like $800,000 of new assets into the firm, on a very regular basis, like usually about every year. Okay. At least $800,000, for about a $3,000 investment. Like that's a pretty good deal. And we had, the vast majority of advisors were way, way more than that. They were in the millions of dollars of new assets that were coming aboard that they directly attributed to being one with nitrogen. And so I look at all that and I go, it tells me that financial advisors need to have more of an investment mindset in their businesses. Okay. When we have an investment mindset in our business, we're saying, let's have the best tech stack, the best client experience. Let's think about how to simplify how our clients engage with us and ask us for things. Let's think about We're a service business, so let's think about how we leverage some of these technologies, particularly what AI can do at the front end to make things faster and snappier for clients. Okay. Um, and so let's have the best tech stack. Number two, let's have the most streamlined operations. Let's invest in making ourselves faster. Let's invest in making our workflows simpler. And when we do that, that's going to, again, free up space in that equation. Okay. And then let's take that space in the equation and let's not just pocket it as more EBITDA in our business. Let's turn around and reinvest it into growth. And by the way, there are also a ton of amazing opportunities out there that I think financial advisors are one of the industries that just don't really even scratch the surface of the possible. Okay. I mean, some of the stuff are out there around digital advertising is amazing. You can take your existing client base and say, hey, in a geographically focused way, make me a lookalike audience like this. Find the people that are like the people I'm serving. And I want to broadcast this message to them. I want to narrowcast this message to them in a really efficient way. I don't know many financial advisors who are doing that. I know personal trainers who are doing it. I know, right? I know real estate agents who are doing it, but I don't see a lot of financial advisors doing that. I feel like there's some great opportunities there, and you have to free up resources by making you got to make the tech stack better, the operational workflows better, free up resources, invest in the business. I think an investment mindset is what can lead to financial advisors growing at a far faster clip.
The investment in the business and seeing the business, because I think too often they go and try to pick and choose these different strategies that they hear. And it kind of is actually like what we talk about the FutureProof Advisor is like, if you go straight to innovation without the mindset that accepts failure and is curious and without the leverage that creates time, then your innovation stuff is going to fail because you're never going to be able to have the fortitude or the persistence to continue it on. So then you're just going to end it. So you have to go linearly, and investing in your business is the first thing. Create those efficiencies, find those operational opportunities, and then take that and invest in these opportunities with that newfound time. Last question I'll ask you, and I ask all my guests because I love this podcast is a selfish podcast because I like to learn from other people that are smarter than me. What's one book out there you think everybody out there should read?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you have had any level of difficulty, and I've had lots. Okay. I one of the most profoundly helpful books for me was written by a guy named Ben Horowitz, and it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And that book is super helpful because it really strips away the illusion of a lot of business books. Because you read some of these business books and you're just like, oh, well, that sounds really fun, and nice. And like everything's super tidy and wonderful. And that's a great picture. I don't know how this flaming dumpster fire that I'm overseeing could ever become that, but I guess we should just be good to great. Like that's what we should be, And so, what I love about The Hard Thing About Hard Things is like Horowitz, who is now like the other half of the investing firm of Andreessen Horowitz, the big venture capital from the Valley. He writes about this journey of starting a company, right before the dot-com crash, and they nearly went bankrupt multiple times and like went through all of this difficulty before finally like building something valuable and being able to sell that business for like $1.5 billion to Hewlett Packard. And it's an amazing journey, amazing story, but so many great lessons along the way that he shares in that book. And it made me feel like I was not crazy when I read that book. So if you're an entrepreneur who has encountered any level of difficulty, it will give you more perspective and also like give you a framework to think about it and figure out how to deal with those challenges.
I will give a second star next to that one. The rawness is there. It's unbelievable. The openness, and just it feels like as you're reading it, you have this person staying next to you like, yeah, I did go through that too. Like, I know exactly what he's doing. Like, yeah, I have someone else that's there. Aaron Klein, I just appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything you're doing. And good luck with Kantio. And for everybody that's listening that wants to get on the wait list,
Contio, Contio.ai, and you can join the wait list right there on the homepage, and we'd love to get you in early.
Awesome. We'll put it in the show notes. Aaron, thanks so much for all you do, man. And thank you for your time here on FutureProof Advisor podcast. Stay well.